Good day, everyone, and welcome to the 5G Factor. I'm Ron Westfall, Research Director here at the Futuring Group. And today, it's a good one. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Olivier Blanchard, a fellow Research Director and Practice Lead for our AI Devices Practice here at the Futuring Group. In fact, Olivier just recently returned from the Samsung Unpacked event, and with that, I think we have some good insights on what's going on in the 5G and mobile ecosystem realms. And with that, also, we'll be focusing on just that, the things that have really jumped out of recent, vintage that merit our attention. And so, with that, Olivier, welcome back to the 5G Factor. How have you been bearing up since the last time you've been on the 5G Factor?
I can't even remember the last time I was on 5G Factor. I've been dodging your invites for a while, not because I wanted to. I've just been on the road. It seems like a lot more in the last 6 months than I have ever. So I've been doing well. It's hard to keep track and to keep pace with all the changes in the industry and the hurricanes and, and all of the everything that's happening all at once. So yeah, it's good to have a minute to be back and catch up with you.
Yes, indeed. And, perfectly understandable. And right you are. It's been a very kinetic last, year plus, really, overall. And I think our first topic that we're kicking off has played a major role. Yes, AI again. However, this time, this is something that I think is really galvanizing, attention. And hopefully by the time our recording is published, it will still be somewhat relevant because matters are moving very quickly. And that is just on January 20th, uh, China based DeepSeek released R1. It's a reasoning model that basically is outperforming, OpenAI's latest O1 model. And that is verified in various third party tests. And so, what is interesting here is apparently 150 researchers at a Chinese hedge fund, also known as DeepSeek, has outflanked the entire work of tens of thousands of engineers and basically almost the entire Western scientific community. And what is this? Just with a handful of modified NVIDIA H800 GPUs? Well, let's see. Let's stay tuned on that. More likely, at least from my perspective, is that DeepSeek was trained on more than 50,000 H100 GPUs. And while that is good, it doesn't automatically mean that the AI ecosystem apparently has reached a point that can train on materially less infrastructure. And that means we still, despite this breakthrough, will probably need to continue our massive commitment to figuring out ways to optimize AI training as well as AI inferencing. And that is naturally links to attaining the main objective of artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Now, a little more background. There's a lot of threads here, but one I'm going to focus on initially here to kick off the conversation is that according to Alexander Wang, the CEO of Scale AI, he's the one that basically, I think, initiated the notion that, okay, what is going on here is that the Chinese have accessed NVIDIA's advanced GPUs on a wider scale than many people realize. And the reality is that the Chinese labs, that they have more H100s than many people think. And he added and shared that understanding is that DeepSeek has about 50,000 H100s. And they can really can't talk about it because it's against the export restrictions that the US has put in place. And as a result, they have many more chips than folks really fully understand. But that's changed, obviously, dramatically. And Elon Musk also seconded the motion. Now, NVIDIA, on the other hand, has insisted that DeepSeek is an excellent AI advancement and a perfect example of test time scaling. So, this is an important technique now that will, I think, get a lot more attention because of what DeepSeek has basically achieved. And in addition, DeepSeek's work illustrates how new models can be created using this technique, leveraging widely available models and compute that is fully export control compliant, emphasize NVIDIA. And so this means that inferencing requirements that require significant NVIDIA GPUs and high performance networking will still be needed into the foreseeable future. And this aligns with what they see as that there are now three scaling laws: pre training, post training, and now test time scaling, the newest one on the block. So, in effect, NVIDIA is suggesting that the DeepSeek used export compliant equivalents of an AMC Gremlin and Pacer and soup them up to the top line equivalents of Maseratis and Bugattis. I know it's a loose analogy, but it's like, wow, this is pretty remarkable that if they only use export compliant GPUs to achieve this, well, I think there's a lot of counter opinion out there. And as a result, there's this mystery like, is the GPU cluster that DeepSeek actually used? I don't think we're really going to know for a little while, but this is definitely, I think, fueling all the speculation. Just how replicable is this? Just how cost efficient is this really? But the outcome is like, okay, great. Now we have AI training that can be done on a much more cost effective, much more energy efficient level. Then, yes, and it's also open source space. That's good news for the rest of the AI ecosystem. Now, officially, DeepSeek claims to have used only about 2,048 NVIDIA H800 chips, which to train the R1 model, and that is alongside the 10,000 older generation A100 GPUs that had already attained before the U.S. Imposed export controls. Now, all this, I think, is going toward NVIDIA's credibility on U.S. export policy. Now, naturally, NVIDIA has to claim that yes, that the chips that were used were export compliant, and that's understandable. However, I think as we dig deeper, and if we take the opinion of folks like the CEO of Signal AI, then I think that means that there's more going on here that can be officially disclosed. Bottom line is that many of the actions that are backed by China's government, I think, as we understand, we've seen this with the Huawei, for example, is that it constitutes what can be characterized as a giant psyop. And it's in this case, China is attempting to create a little bit more uncertainty among the investment and tech community about AI's prospects in terms of it being, primarily driven by U.S. or Western technology know-how. And as you can see, it did effectively shift the spotlight from the $500 billion Project Star, which has its own set of major questions. And so we have been, really looking at, how can we improve scaling laws and seeking efficiency with AI despite the DeepSeek breakthrough. And, again, we've been using open source, RAG, fine tuning, and forking capabilities, all these AI techniques to allow smaller models to be more performant. And we've already seen companies such as IBM, Meta, Mistral, and others have stepped up and really have made, I think, an impact on how this can be better achieved. That is, right size large language models that are better performant. And with that, Olivier, from your perspective, I know you've already provided some, I think, very valuable insight on this. And what is your take on what's going on here? I know this is just one aspect here, but what else do you see going on here?
Right. Well, I mean, that was a lot. I feel like the meme, with a guy like this, and it's like he's got the board with all the red string, just kind of connecting everything. Um, so I think that everything that you said is on point, including the theory or the hypothesis around Chinese psyops. Although I would caution that if we equate the AI race between U.S. and China to any other arms race or space race in the past, the prevailing sort of tactic to harm the other side, your opponent, isn't to necessarily undermine credibility of their model. It's to get them to spend a lot more resources chasing the same thing instead of trying to make them efficient. So by releasing DeepSeek, uh, China, assuming that the Chinese government is involved in some way in this strategy, in the timing, and in the tone and tenor of this release, um, the objective for China should be to just let the U.S. overspend on infrastructure and AI resources instead of taking this sort of more efficient, scrappier approach that they took to achieve the same results with fewer resources. So I take the notion that China is trying to undermine U.S. markets and U.S. investments in AI with a grain of salt, a little bit. But having said that, I think most people are actually missing the point with DeepSeek. I don't know that we'll still be talking about DeepSeek in 6 months. I think that the larger trend, which is something that we've been talking about for the better part of the last year, is that there's been an evolution. There's been a trend line in AI training and AI inference that transcends DeepSeek and any other company like it that is very likely to pop up in the next 6 to 18 months. And it's this: we're at a confluence of an increased and sort of systemic um, improvements in the efficiency of the model on the training side, on inference as well, but definitely on training, um, where models that had to be trained in the cloud with massive resources behind them, massive inputs of power, of chip and compute to train these models, have become so much more efficient in the last year that what used to be only trainable on the cloud can now be trained on PCs and in some cases on mobile. So we're seeing these models sort of shrink and get faster and cheaper to train, just by virtue of the fact that they're becoming more efficient. On the other hand, we have this other element, which is the chips are getting more high performance as well, which is the whole value proposition between NVIDIA's Blackwell, right? You can use fewer GPUs to generate more outputs faster and more cheaply. So there might be a slightly more upfront cost on the GPU side, but you need fewer of them to achieve the same results, and less power, less water, all of these other resources, less footprints data center wide. So we have these two efficiencies basically working together to make AI training a lot cheaper and a lot faster. This was happening already. It is going to continue to happen. It's one of the things that is fueling the proliferation of AI processors and AI models from the cloud to the edge, and creating this more hybrid ecosystem of basically sort of like cloud to endpoint uh, AI training and inference, which I think is the reality that will be existing in as early as later this year. And we'll touch on that again when we get back to our coverage of the Samsung event last week, because there's actually an element that plays into this. And so the issue with Stargate and the enormous investment numbers that we were talking about a week ago, and sort of like this injection of excitement in AI infrastructure, specifically in the United States, seemed a little bit I don't know, warped last week. When the announcement was made, the impression that I had, given what we just talked about, and sort of validated by the DeepSeek announcement a few days ago, and the sell off of U.S. tech stocks in the last 72 hours, um, is this. Um, this is already happening, and it's we don't need to spend trillions of dollars building massive data centers that are going to house millions of chips and servers and racks and require nuclear power plants and some kind of weird re-engineering of our water supply and our water management systems. We don't need to completely just stop everything that we're doing and build these massive projects. Um, because the models and the chips are becoming more efficient. And this federated, distributed AI training and inference is already happening, and the costs are getting lower. So I think that what we're seeing last week is, let's go back 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago at CES, Jensen introduced sort of like his vision for the next phase of what NVIDIA is about. And we're going to talk about NVIDIA because NVIDIA has sort of like the market power and the best position in terms of GPU infrastructure and IP when it comes to training AI at scale. His model at CES, the introduction of Blackwell, all the things that he wanted to do, what he talked about in terms of training for automotive, training for industries, doing all these virtual sort of um, digital doubles and digital twins of the world and different environments is still valid. None of that has changed. Um, but it's the 2025 spend on this and the reality of where technology is today in 2025, with 2025 chips, 2025 models, the entire 2025 current layer of AI solutions and AI IP is absolutely not where we will be in 2028 and in 2030. And I think that Stargate misses the point in that it looks like um, the type of spend that we would put together if we assumed that these efficiency advancements, these efficiency improvements, were to stop this year, right? So we're looking at builds for 2030 with budgets that reflect where we are today in 2025, not where we will be in 2028, 2030, 2035. And so I think that they're a little bit bloated. I think it's warped expectations. Um, I think the front end investments uh, may be accurate. It may be the right number dollar wise, but I don't think it's necessarily. I think it may be over indexed on the data center side. Is what I'm saying. I think that taking a more holistic approach to the entire ecosystem of research of chips all up and down the AI value chain, from basically wearables all the way up to the data center, is a more realistic approach. So I think that we're going to end up spending a lot less on data centers and a lot more on production, on supply chain, and on all of those middle layers to create a more sort of hybrid, ubiquitous AI ecosystem. Um, and DeepSeek's announcements, and obviously the reaction to the market, which I think was an overreaction, but that's a whole other story, is just one of several proof points along the way that the rapidly increasing efficiency of AI training and AI inference workloads, for that matter, and the sort of like diminishing curve of costs associated with that is going to be a disruptive force in some of the calculations that we've had about how many chips we're going to need to be able to power this new AI uh, AI economy, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing for NVIDIA and for AMD and for everybody else who's involved with this, but we should perhaps adjust these massive numbers that we've been looking at and look at it more as in terms of diversification of chips. So if you're an NVIDIA, for instance, don't just focus, or if you're looking at NVIDIA for, in your investments. I'm not giving any investment advice, so don't take that for this. But if you're looking only at NVIDIA for its data center GPUs, you're missing the point. You need to look at NVIDIA all up and down the value chain, from PCs and devices and IoT all the way up to the data center. And if you're looking at other companies like Qualcomm or Intel or AMD or MediaTek, for instance, you also need to look at those device layers and those intermediate layers where there's going to be a lot of scale to deliver AI organically through this hybrid model. If that makes any sense. There's a lot.
Yeah, and this topic warrants that. I think we're only going to scratch the surface, but I think that are outstanding viewpoints there that you shared, Olivier. First of all, let's look at the big picture here. I agree. This is not an existential threat to NVIDIA by any stretch of the imagination. And yes, their portfolio has diversified over the last few years. It's no longer, about, only GPUs, so to speak, or at least, there's that perception. It's, the software and the services. It's definitely been diversified. And yeah, I think one important takeaway from CES, among many, was what NVIDIA is doing with Cosmos. That is, taking real world video and applying it to AI training and capabilities, so that you have these outcomes that can be very useful. And just that real world settings, how to optimize, say, what's going on in the warehouse, as an example, and advancing robotics and so forth. And so, yeah, a lot is going on here. But I think what is going on with DeepSeek, and for that matter, Project Stargate, I think that's important to note here is that it's like the thing of the AI hype cycle here. And to your point, I think okay, what about the $500 billion that's been allocated toward Project Stargate? What are the implications of a lot more efficient AI capabilities throughout the AI ecosystem? And this is a variation of Jevons paradox. That is, if you make something a lot more efficient, that will actually increase more demand for it because it becomes more affordable and more broadly available. And to your point, yes, when it comes to hybrid AI, okay, a lot of the heavy lifting AI training that's done in these GPU clusters and data centers, throughout, say hyperscaler networks, a lot of this can now be done on a more distributed basis, edge data centers and so forth. But also, to your point about devices, yes, the AI inferencing, let alone some of the training, can now be done at the outer edge, and that includes devices that are powered by Qualcomm, ARM, MediaTek, and Apple, as well as across the broader edge, including Broadcom, Marvell, Intel, AMD, you name it. That okay, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to enlist NVIDIA GPUs to do this more distributed edge training and inferencing, but it's really, I guess, just that welcome news for the entire AI ecosystem, as well as for the other chip players out there. On that note, let's now segue to the next topic, which is really AI on the device level. And as we saw at Samsung Unpacked, which you were able to join, is that Samsung announced the Galaxy S25 Ultra, it's Galaxy S25 Plus, and Galaxy S25, all aimed at setting a new standard for true AI companionship with, basically our, context-aware mobile experiences. And I think that's a very poignant way to, position this and market this at the onset. And what we saw is that Samsung introduced multimodal AI agents, and as a result, the Galaxy S25 series is really a first step in Samsung's vision to change the way users interact with their phone, and also with the real world for that matter. And so it's using the customized Snapdragon 8 Elite mobile platform to attain a lot of these goals. And also the Galaxy chipset is designed to deliver greater on-device processing power for Galaxy AI, and improved camera range and so forth, and let alone Galaxy's a Pro Visual Engine. So I'm gonna stop there because you were there. You have, I know, in-depth perspective on this. So, what were some of your key takeaways from what Samsung announced with the new Galaxy S25 line?
Right. So it was it was a really interesting event. Of all the Samsung Unpacked events that I could have gone to, this was probably one of the more significant. And I think somehow a lot of that significance got missed by the coverage of the event. So let me give you my take on this and why I think it's so important. I've been operating under the assumption, as an analyst and as a practitioner of where AI is going and how, I've been operating under the assumption that ultimately what we want is ubiquitous AI, device agnostic AI, where you walk into a room, it doesn't matter where you are, um, the devices that is nearest you and most capable of delivering the agentic AI experience that you're as a user you're expecting, uh, and doing it the more efficiently is going to be the one to deliver it. So if I'm talking to an assistant and prompting it and saying, I wonder what the weather is today, or tell me, what are my appointments this morning? It doesn't matter if it's my watch, my headphones, my smart glasses, my PC, my smart speaker, whatever it is. That's where it's going to go. And with agentic AI specifically, one of the really interesting user experience advantages or value propositions is this hyper personalization, where your agents learn from you. They learn from your habits, they learn from your needs, from your patterns. They become sort of like your best friend. They know what you want and in what format and what style and what speed before you know it, but definitely when you prompt it. So they can anticipate your needs and adjust your environment, your workspace, your calendar, your shopping, planning, all of it. for you. Um, However, what that requires is a lot of device to cloud integration. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of how that needs to work from an architectural standpoint and an orchestration standpoint, but it's extremely complicated. And it requires some data to be on device, to be cloned in the cloud, and to be accessible both in the cloud and on device, so that there's no lag between the prompt and the response. So you can have naturally timed l- natural language conversations with your agent and your AI assistant without having to wait for a response or like, hey, I'm thinking about it. Give me a second. What Samsung did though is something very different from that, which is super, super interesting. And at first I thought, okay, this is the wrong approach. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, wait a minute, this is actually smart. What Samsung did is they prioritized personalization and data security and data integrity and safety by essentially moving a lot of those processes, the training and the inference, to the device itself and blocking it from the cloud. And so essentially, what they did is they have two parallel systems. They have because they're Android devices. There's Gemini, right, which is kind of like the Android device to cloud AI platform that remains untouched. So anything that you do with search, it's going to go out for Gemini, and you have this normal integration. But all of the super personal stuff that it's learning about you, essentially, is sort of like the personality graph that an agentic AI it needs to be able to build and train itself on in real time based on your needs is super personal. And Samsung made the decision to keep all of that on the device secure, no contact with the cloud. Nobody else is going to train on your data. Nobody's collecting your data. Google is not collecting that private data. It's on your device. Not only that, but it's protected by their Knox security solution, and it's post quantum encryption, which means that currently, at least in theory, I haven't validated this, but based on what Samsung is telling us, it's not decryptable with quantum computers, which is really nice. So pros and cons of that. Pros, obviously, data security, private. All of your data remains private, and you have this I think added sense of privacy that wouldn't normally have with a lot of AI products and solutions, and it's tied directly to Samsung. The con is that if you lose your device, you have to start all over again with all of that agentic training. Um, but device to device, when you upgrade from the S25 to the S26 or whatever the next generation is, you'll be able to do that. You just can't like upload your that private data to the cloud. But all of this is done because the chip that they're using, the SoC, the system on chip, is capable of doing that. And in this case, it happens to be Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Elite, which is the sort of like flagship platform that Qualcomm introduced at their summits back in October of last year. So it's the latest and greatest, but it is a custom chip made specifically for Samsung. So it's actually the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, which has a few additional bells and whistles for some camera improvements and also for this enhanced agentic AI on device capability. But it sort of illustrates, I think, the um, the new paradigm of this distributed agentic AI, where sure you can train a lot of models and do a lot of things in the cloud, and there are things that work best in the cloud, and that should be operating that way, just as a cloud service. But there is also oh, all right, I'm going to continue it. It paused for a second. That'll be a nice place to cut. But there's also a really huge leap forward in capabilities of these ARM-based chips that are on mobile phones, that are on PCs, that increasingly are showing up in smartwatches as well, in smart glasses, in essentially every digital product that we touch. There's more and more capable of doing this. And the size of the models, that you can train and do inference workloads with on a PC versus mobile versus smart glasses depends a little bit, first of all, on the system on chip itself, but also on the size and the form factor, right? You can put a lot more processing power in a PC than you can in a phone, and you can put a lot more processing power in a phone than you can on smart glasses or on a smartwatch. Um, but you also have to think about how all these devices work together and how they can pool their processing resources so that instead of processing something on the watch, you're processing some of it on the watch, some of it on the phone, some of it on the PC. And a platform like Snapdragon, which is in all of these devices, might be able to just kind of work all together more efficiently than cross-platform combinations to give a user an enhanced AI experience that is primarily on device, or that can sort of separate the needs of pushing some of the workloads to cloud services and then keeping some of them private for a variety of reasons, for speed and efficiency, for power efficiency, for cost efficiency, but also for privacy. And so it has implications for consumers, right? You and me just wanting to keep things private and cheap and not having to pay for all of this cloud inference stuff. But also on the commercial side for businesses, because now the more data they can have in house, the more secure their data might be, and the more processing they can do in house. Also, the lower the costs I mean, they don't necessarily have to pay for as many instances of training or workloads that they're pushing out to a cloud through cloud service. They can keep a lot of that stuff in house.
Yeah, I think it's good news for, say, the health monitoring use case. This
Yes.
and it aligns. And that's, I think, one constant theme when we saw, with the launch of Project Stargate, Larry Ellison step up and say, "Hey, this AI investment is warranted because of advances that could be made in medical research or tracking medical records and so forth, with that privacy respected, built in, and so forth." And likewise, just being able to have a device that somebody can have confidence it's going to maintain my privacy, but it's also can just do that, detect issues before they get out of control, or just across the board, any health benefits out there. So that, I think, is certainly the good news.
That was one of the main use cases that I'm not even sure that it was. I think it might have been under indexed a little bit at the announcement itself, but in the pre briefings, we spent a lot of time on that particular use case. How Samsung specifically, but I think as a concept, having all of that data and that agentic AI processing and analyzing and recommendation engine on the device as opposed to in the cloud, first of all, is more immediate, but also um, I think if and I think especially with medical issues, I think people want their data to be protected, and we've all been burned so many times with hacks and our private data, especially medical data, getting out into the wrong hands, or just getting out in the public. This this takes care of that, and so you have a personal assistant that is able to, through the use of different devices and sensors, whether it's a Galaxy Watch or a Ring or other sensors, um, essentially n- guide you and give you feedback on how well you're sleeping, for instance, your eating cycles, what your caloric intake is. We were talking about things also about a more granular approach to your diet, which you can sort of enter manually, but also the AI knows what you're eating. And so it can sort of extrapolate the types of nutrients that you're getting and not getting. So it's creating and painting a much more again, granular and detailed and complex picture of your overall health. And it is intelligent enough to understand your cycles, understand your patterns, understand cause and effect of good and bad behaviors, make recommendations, monitor your health. And it's amazing because it's all on the device and it's all secure. And I love this. It moves some of the I think the real true immediate benefits of agentic AI out of the cloud in areas where it doesn't need to be in the cloud. So some things need to be in the cloud, some things shouldn't be, and we now have the capability of parsing that according to our needs and according to our preferences, and that's gonna change that changes the equation a little bit for how we think about AI investments And again, it speaks to that diversification of focusing on cloud AI training and inference, but also focusing on these edge use cases that are becoming much more prevalent and with a huge potential for adoption. And the footprint, if you look at the mobile industry, if you look at the PC industry, um, even if those numbers, essentially the install base, doesn't really grow that much, there's a refresh cycle here that's going to bring a lot of these AI chips to this broad install base. So the market doesn't actually have to grow to show results. It's the refresh cycle that's going to show those results and push a lot of these AI chip numbers out. And that's what I'm hopeful about.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue for who else can benefit from, the potential largesse of the AI ecosystem overall growth. And this ties directly to, well, 5G service providers, certainly, the folks who provide mobile services to consumers and businesses, and specifically here in the US. And what I think is interesting is that we're seeing, major US operators such as AT&T and T and Verizon looking into, okay, how can we play a more integral role and monetize, AI in terms of it, being closely linked to the services they provide. It's not exclusively mobile, but it certainly includes, for example, their fiber services, business services. But I think what's interesting here is that they have the real estate that we touched on, Olivier. How do we push more AI capabilities, training and inferencing, closer to where the customer is? Bringing the AI to where the data is certainly the mantra that we've have heard a great deal about. And so what's interesting is that now we see that Verizon Business has revealed basically a bundle of products that are designed for enterprises and also cloud providers as well as hyperscalers to again deploy those AI workloads at scale by basically offering a single platform that is designed to do just that. And what it is, it's called Verizon AI Connect, and it's offering a blend of really the operator's fiber infrastructure along with its power, space, and cooling capabilities. And with those resources, using it to deliver it, but also it's backed by its virtualized 5G programmable network to really make the AI workloads more, I guess you say, customized to the customer needs out there. And so what's interesting is that already Google Cloud and Meta have already onboarded Meta platforms specifically, and I think that's important because these are going to be logically the early adopters of AI infrastructure platforms such as this that are offered by a major service provider. And not to mention, Verizon and Google are also looking at ways to advance AI services for things like network maintenance as well as anomaly detection. So this is in play. This is something that I think will kind of help the service providers. Okay, finally, we have a way to use our real estate to take advantage of AI, and this is not going to be necessarily a repeat of things like mobile edge computing and so forth. There's still that risk. The operators still not be able to figure out how can we be integral to this. But I think this is demonstrating that they're off to a decent start. And not to be outdone, AT&T recently secured $850 million dollars from the sale and leaseback of its underused CO facilities from a property company, Capital Rain, as part of its copper retirement plan. And so this deal closed in January. It involves the asset transfer of 74 properties across the US, spanning more than 13 million square feet. So the bottom line here is that the operators are becoming smarter about how they can take advantage of the real estate assets that they do have today. That is retiring CO assets as well as other edge infrastructure, and working with the major AI players out there, i.e., the hyperscalers, to basically come up with mutually beneficial ways to monetize AI in the near future and certainly longer term. And Olivier, what are your thoughts on this? Do you see the service providers really being able to step up and actually, playing a meaningful role in this, or is this something like, okay, it's another missed opportunity, and the service providers will be reduced to kind of a commodity like provider of the infrastructure for the AI services that are running across, the clouds out there.
Maybe a little bit of both. So yeah, no, I think it's smart for them to do it. So the situation that we're in is we're expecting, obviously, if we're looking to spend $500 billion on building data center infrastructure, it means that we're looking for a lot more computes to come from somewhere. A lot of these, builds are years down the road. We can't really start yet. So the expectation is that we're going to need a lot more compute power very quickly. Where can we find it? And if you have data centers already out there that are underutilized, right? Or that can be sort of, a lot of that processing power can be retasked for, higher price or more premium services. It makes sense for a business to go for that ROI, right? For that opportunity. So one, if a lot of those data center resources are underutilized, not used at all, suddenly they can be, assigned to this. If we can charge a little extra for this because AI is more valuable than, being on a 5G network, maybe there's value in that as well. I think though that you're right. Ultimately, there's whether it's successful or not, that is going to depend on them and how they package it, and there are a lot of variables there. I think at some point, those data centers and those resources age out. They're no longer um, the most efficient, the most cost efficient, and maybe they just get retired, or the Verizons and AT&Ts of the world upgrade their systems specifically for those AI workloads, and now we start seeing a transition of spend where they also become, they're buying the Blackwell powered racks, and they're becoming more AI focused, and they become part of this sort of like ecosystem of AI workload training and inference services, and it's all interwoven. Maybe that's possible, but for right now, at least for the next few years, while we wait for all of these massive data center builds, um, they're there with capacity, and so absolutely they should go after that market and see what they can make of it. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work at all. Middle best case scenario, they make some money, it becomes commoditized, and eventually it just kind of dies out because they're outperformed by other outfits. And best case scenario, they build a whole new business model that's going to be really lucrative for them. So it's worth the shot.
Yes, and I think this is again, AI and its open-ended possibilities. There's
Yeah.
just a myriad of variables here. So on the one hand, it's good news for the service providers. Certainly,
Mhm.
test time scaling is introduced to the possibility of okay, AI as we do it could definitely become more commoditized, as you pointed out, and thus, that's good news for the service providers that this become a lot less expensive to do the AI infrastructure hosting and so forth. Now the however is will this result in monetize outcomes for them? And so yeah, that is again that kind of one of the many I would say the three doors that you presented possibilities, and it's hard to bet right now on the operators because the entire AI ecosystem is basically going through a lot of flux as we speak, and so we'll come back to this. We'll talk more
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. We should come back to this 6 months from now and see where we are.
Definitely, or let alone say after Mobile World Congress.
Yeah.
A lot could change just from that. So this has been great. Thank you so much, Olivier, for coming on board, and again appreciate the opportunity for you to share your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I am not going to Mobile World Congress as of now this year. I'm skipping it. I'll probably go next year. But I'll be looking forward to the announcements surrounding MWC, because I'm sure this very topic is gonna be one of the major themes of the trade show. Yeah.
Yeah, that we can bet on. And that's something I
Yeah.
think we can all agree
Yeah.
on. I might as well call it AI World Congress for the time being.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and well, great. Yes, I know we'll certainly be sharing thoughts on Mobile World Congress. And beyond that, thank you everyone for joining the 5G Factor. Again, you can bookmark us on the Futurum Group website, as well as we can be viewed on TechStrong TV And we certainly, again, appreciate taking the time to listen to our thoughts. And with that, everybody, have a great AI and test time scaling, as let alone 5G day. Again, thank you all.